And we are back at it. Welcome, listeners, visitors, and friends. My name is Mitch Benson, and I'm the Franchise Development Manager here at A Place at Home, joined by our franchise business coach, Aubrey Phillips.
Hi, Mitch, and
Woo!
everybody.
And everyone, thunderous applause. I can feel it
Yes,
already.
I can feel it too. Thank you, Mitch.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Well, Aubrey, how's your day going? Anything going on in the office this week?
Gosh, no, nothing exciting that I can really think. Oh, wait, hold on. We do have two people here for training right this
That's
second.
right. I heard about
hmm
that. That's because we
Yes.
have two offices in the location, learning everything they need to get open. And who better to learn from than Aubrey Phillips, our franchise business coach? How about that?
Yes, but they're learning a lot of operations from Danny as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're a tag
Finance and
team.
operations support specialist. I suppose
hmm
that's what's happening now while you and I are just hanging out on LinkedIn for a little while, right? Yeah. Which is, thank you so much for your time. I just screw around like this the whole time. So I appreciate you indulging me, right?
Anytime. I love indulging you, Mitch.
Well, thank you. At least somebody does. All right. Take notice, people. Come on. Truth be told, this is a really exciting topic here today,
Mhm.
and something that, of course, our trainees in the office likely heard about or are working toward now to solve. Which is our big topic today. Caregiver shortage is driving demand for home care businesses, right? There's a lot of buzzy energy to many of those words, right?
Yes.
We're hearing
Yes.
so much about that right now, and not just in our space in non-medical home care. I would say any business that's relying on teams of people to provide goods and services are feeling some sort of shortage, right? Are requiring some sort of retooling of their processes to focus back on those folks delivering end products and services to the people who need them, right?
Mhm.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means to our industry, right? But let's just double check. First off, before we find out if there's a problem to solve at all, right? Aubrey, is there a caregiver shortage?
I mean, not that I've heard of.
Nah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
no,
think it's
I don't think
I don't think
so.
so.
I've heard that
Pretty
rumor, but
sure that's made up, right? Uh, well, perfect. Then everybody, thank you so much for joining today.
been
Go
real.
forth and conquer, and it's been great.
Actually, yeah, no, of course. Yes, there is a caregiver shortage. Yeah, I think even if you're not in this industry, caregiver shortage are two words that people have probably heard together, even if they have no context for what it means. So, yeah, there's definitely a shortage, and a couple of reasons for that, obviously.
Mhm, mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and when I think about it too, you and I have talked about this before. It's something that we spend a lot of our energy on
mhm,
to set up, franchisees in this space for success.
yeah,
And I would say, when I think about it, it's like what has happened in modern day to change the fabric of global society.
right.
And that's the first big area of reasons why there's a caregiver shortage at this time, and
Yes.
that would be COVID-19, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Would you agree with that? What impact did that have on our caregiver opportunities?
I mean, on it, of course, yes, that was incredibly impactful. There were a lot of caregivers that left the industry, at least during that time, for a whole host of reasons, right? For the same reasons that a lot of people not in this industry started working from home, and you know, but anyway, yeah. So that definitely, we saw a big loss with COVID. People getting out of healthcare in general,
Mhm,
for a whole host of reasons, and then. Obviously, there were financial provisions put in place during a lot of the pandemic that allowed people to stay home,
mhm,
in maybe a different way than what they were used to before. So,
mhm.
we
Yeah,
definitely did see we took a hit during the pandemic. Let's just put it that way, for sure.
absolutely. And I think that there would be multiple industries that would stand next to us and
Mhm.
agree, right?
Yes.
Everything changed for the most part. And I would say, outside of our industry too, those changes are continuing to be felt, across industries,
Mhm.
sometimes now differently than they ever had been before. I'm thinking of the technology industry, of the
Yeah.
financial industry, who are feeling shockwaves today that may have been put in motion from what a lot of our frontline employees and caregivers felt years ago,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
By now, right? So
Mhm.
that's a big deal to everyone. And I think one thing that, as you say, of course, COVID, gave a lot of folks the opportunity to remain with their families, as many of our caregivers are primary caregivers for their own family, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Um, Combined with other industries, I think home care saw less of a return to work than other industries, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the study that you see, we saw a struggle to get back into the industry, right?
Hmm.
So that when you say that, right, there's a chunk of our workforce that's missing, right?
Hmm.
That maybe some others had an opportunity to regain, right? Um, and that's something to deal with. Okay, and I think we're going to talk about some solutions here too, right? But one thing I want to help us all use here is a frame for this shortage. It's not that in the last 5 years, right, we've had forces that have pushed people around in the industry, right? This is something that healthcare has been dealing with for a long time. Would you agree? We've seen this over time.
Oh, yeah, yeah, most definitely. In fact, shortage is the verbiage that we're using now, but I can tell
Mm,
you pre-COVID, it was called a crisis. That is how we kind of referred to it in general. And by which I mean to say, like, we already were struggling with caregivers, even before COVID, and for a whole host of reasons.
mm,
There were the job itself can be very demanding, and yet financially you're not always being compensated for the work that you're doing as well as you should be or could be for the work that you're doing.
mm,
And it's demanding work, right? Being in with families and dealing with those dynamics and just the actual physical part of it.
mm,
And depending on the agency that you were working with, we sometimes caregivers can be treated more like widgets. That's my
mm.
word always. I like the widget word.
Yeah.
But sometimes they could be treated a little bit less than, right? In different
Mhm,
agencies and different environments. And then, burnout, of course, is a big one. And burnout's
mhm,
a real thing. And I think people across all industries are familiar with burnout. So
mhm,
this
mhm.
is by not any means did COVID just demolish this industry, for caregivers. Not by any means. It just put another layer of areas of opportunity
Mhm. Yeah.
for us.
Yeah. Well, for better or for worse, right? The
Right.
healthcare industry has had a challenge as long as healthcare has been around.
Hmm.
And what I think it offers, yes, is a complex playground to enter, an opportunity to provide better and better service, right?
Yep.
And you've touched on where I think we're going to find the answers, right? But before we set up, our answers to life's problems, which we'll solve today,
Right.
right?
We do this every time we
Naturally,
are
it just
solving. Yeah. Hmm.
happens, right? That's
Yes.
that's
The,
why the Mitch and
the
Aubrey
magic.
show,
That's
you
right.
know, right? The metrics speak for themselves, guys.
Right. Right. Millions
Right?
of viewers. Millions.
Yes, absolutely. Upon millions, we'll just put a plus at the end there, right? Well, I see these as when I think about the blog that we've written at a place at homefranchise.com that states the caregiver shortage is driving demand for home care businesses, right? It struck me in an interesting way. All the information, is very helpful in a way to wrap our heads around this, especially if we're entrepreneurs considering entering this space and making an impact, right?
Mhm.
Um, Yet I feel like I want to clarify this to bring us to a point where we can solve some things, right? In my view, right, the caregiver shortage itself is not solely responsible for driving demand in the home care business, right? I think that in fact there's an increasing demand within home care, uh, essentially by shifting, priorities of our clients, right?
Mhm.
Where we'd like to age in place, right? That ultimately drives more and more. I think desire and wanting from our families to stay at home, right?
Mhm.
While that's happening, we are also seeing this headwind of a decreasing staffing pool, right? Of folks who are called to this work who can make it work for themselves and their families and their career, right? So they're like two things happening at the same time, right? And what I think they both are actually driving, right, is a importance or a renewed focus from home care agencies on how best to recruit and retain our caregivers, right?
Mhm.
And that's my soapbox, and I'll get off of it. right? I think, but if that's true, and it remains to be seen, but that's how I see it in my view, right? Then I think the best that we can do is see what that renewed focus looks like. How are we going to better recruit folks called to this industry? How are we going to help them feel valued, and be retained by the agency to continue to do this great work, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I think it's hitting on some of the main forces that you described earlier that has challenged the industry for years, right? I think it's payment conditions, right? It's
Mhm.
it's the widget concern of feeling like we're just another cog in the wheel,
Yeah.
when in fact what we offer is so much more important than that, right? And then the cascading effects of feeling burnout at our roles, right? We can find ways to solve these for the great frontline individuals who are offering this care. I think we can meet the demand better given the current climate.
Yeah.
So these are the problems of the universe, and Aubrey is going to solve them for us all, and Mitch is going to hang out in the background, right?
Wait,
Yeah.
no, Mitch, we're a team. We're a
That's right. Okay.
team.
Yes, yes. We're gonna do it together. Right. Excellent. Uh,
Just
so
you and I, though.
yeah, we're gonna do it. Right. This is really it. When we can see these answers here, I think we stand a better chance at turning around a caregiver shortage. Right. But let's
Yeah.
start with the one thing that we must have to be able to do this good work, no matter what. Right. And that's adequate payment for our services. Right.
Mhm.
So right now, right, I think a lot of folks had left the industry because of low pay, generally speaking, right? Amongst other reasons, and that's the other piece of this conversation, right? It's not one thing gets solved and opens up the door to the next problem that we can then tackle, a la a maze or something like that, right? It's all happening at the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so if that's an issue, right, it's kind of the back pocket answer to everyone to say, "Well, pay more," right? Isn't that just the answer to it? Maybe that's as
Yeah.
simple as that. But Aubrey, can you talk to me a little bit about what the answer is to maybe the low payment issues of our industry?
Uh, well, I obviously, like, I'm a proponent of private duty home care, right? So specifically, you know, private pay clients. But there is, that's something of note, right? Because the low pay, traditionally,
Mm,
I think for a long time this industry was able to get away with less than great pay. We've always
mm,
tried to be very competitive, within a place at home, but and I think we're really seeing a switch over here,
mm,
as the whole world evolves, post pandemic.
mm,
But I think there's something to be said for, agencies working with clients directly, and that can help
mm,
with the pay gap a little bit. Um, eh,
mm.
yeah, so that
Yeah.
that's my thought process on it. And I think you talk a lot of prospects and new franchisees about this exact thing, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah.
And what we get the opportunity to do is to work together with our clients, just as you said,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I remember as COVID was really getting it underway, and we were seeing shockwaves after the initial health crisis of saying, "Hey, we need to find ways to address the pay rates of our caregivers." To be sure
Mhm.
they can safely come to work and consistently offer great service to our clients. And that was a conversation we had to have with those clients about what that might look like for them. And
Mhm.
like every other thing that's being, priced, in our country right now, it had gone up, right? But
Mhm.
we get that chance. We get that opportunity to have a conversation with the clients, with the end users of that service about what that's like, right? As opposed to a state or federally funded program where we don't get to have a conversation about what reimbursement looks like. We just have to find some other way around it, right?
Yeah.
Um, but we get to do that, right? We get to do that and have that as an opportunity for our clients to have a say in it, saying, okay, if we're seeing a $2 an hour increase, right, we know that that's giving our caregiver a better chance to come in to the house and continue to take care of mom and dad, right?
Mhm.
That's what the conversation sounds like a little bit more than walking to the grocery store and eggs are more expensive now, right?
Right. Right.
Nobody asked me about that. And I didn't have a chance to even say, right? The,
Right.
the force of that raising price is still probably, going to happen with or without me. But every decision we get to make in home care is not without someone else. It's with everybody involved. And
Mhm.
that gives us a better chance to offer that for our caregivers to continue to offer that great care to our clients.
Yeah. And I will say that, of course, we've seen, service prices go up over the last couple of years because of that exact reason. I don't believe that we've had any clients system wide, at least reported back to me, that have had an issue with that. In fact, more often than not, they are genuinely grateful for their caregiver and are happy to ensure that their caregiver is well cared for by their employer, but also able to continue the care that they're providing for them. So,
Mhm, mhm. What a huge, proof of concept, right?
mhm,
The fact that those conversations were to happen,
yep,
coached by amazing franchise business coaches in the home care industry, right? Set up for success. And what you heard from a lot of folks who were having those conversations was all pretty positive, right?
mhm,
And there's a lot of ways to think about that. Consider what alternatives look like and how much more expensive those are, right? Compared to the rate increase we're discussing now, making sure that's always communicated to the great caregiver who has their own lives to think of, right?
mhm,
We're going to the grocery store and both seeing that eggs are more expensive as well. They need some help here to be able to do everything outside of their daily work as well, right? And that tends to work pretty efficiently, and prove great results, right?
mhm,
So that's just it. That's a way to be sure that the dollars and cents that need to be in the conversation can get on the table, right? Without that, like you mentioned before, there was maybe some space for the industry to get away with it, years ago. And I think a lot of industries are reckoning with that now, right? So
mhm,
finding ways to answer the question of low pay, I think will give us more energy back to our caregivers and turn this around a little bit, right?
yeah,
Let's say this. Let's build it though. We know that all of these things happen at the same time, so it's not one thing gets solved, then we're on to the next thing. But let's assume that we do. We have a competitive pay rate that is helping our caregivers consistently provide great service to
mhm,
those clients. Let's say we got that right. One of our next leading factors that's drawing folks away from our industry, right, is the widget concern, right?
mhm,
Is
yep.
feeling like we're a robot doing menial labor, things like this, right? I know I don't feel good about that. And what does make me feel good is talking to Aubrey about solving the world's problems, right? And it's a lot of fun, right? That kind of thing. How do we deal with this? How do we increase, a show of respect and value to our caregivers?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for culture. I feel like for like probably a decade or close to it, that's been a real buzzword, but
Yep.
it's not really a buzzword. It's a real thing. Though I do want to say that so a positive office culture is going to be very very helpful. But when I say an office culture, I'm actually talking more about a caregiver culture because
Ooh.
in this industry, a lot of your caregivers are not necessarily in the office day to day. So you could
Mhm.
have a spectacular office culture, but that's not necessarily going to be your caregivers will see it, but it's not something they're necessarily able to participate in on a
Mhm.
regular basis. But I do think that part of that starts with exactly what we just finished talking about, like recognizing the value of caregivers, the fact that we wouldn't have a business without those caregivers, and finding a solution that addresses one of the biggest hardships for them in this industry, which is lack of pay. So I
Mhm.
think that's a big part of it, going to bat for our caregivers and going to their clients and our clients and having these conversations to set them up better financially for the future.
Mhm.
And I think honestly, I say this over and over again, but just remembering that they're not widgets. I know I say that a lot, but that's to me, it's kind of that simple, like
Yeah.
they are an asset to your business. You wouldn't
Mhm.
have a business without them. And so they should be treated like that.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Yeah. to that's so huge, right?
mhm.
To celebrate someone for the work that they've done, uh, took you how many minutes? Took you how many dollars? Took you how many
Yeah.
whatever, right? I,
Mhm.
I promise you that if you're an entrepreneur thinking about, is this really something I should start into my business? I think that you can't afford not to do it, right?
Yep.
That's just it. I don't think there's an opportunity for you to say that this isn't a priority. I'm going to focus on other things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think too, I mean, we do a lot of stuff around here that actually recognize specific caregivers. So, our offices do Caregiver of the Month. We give out, or they give out, I should say, Hero Awards. We do Caregiver of the Year every year. It's always a big deal. And all of those things are really important. That recognition is really important.
Mhm,
But to be really honest with you, it's literally the consistent day to day behavior and interactions that you have with your caregivers
mhm,
that reinforce that culture. It's not
mhm.
necessarily the once a month, like so and so did a great job. Those are great. We love recognizing them, but it's really going to be those day to day consistencies that are going to make a big difference.
Mhm, mhm. I love that. And, you saying this calls to mind a franchisee in California, right? Who it mentioned is that he's always in communication with the great
Mhm.
caregivers in his business,
Yep.
right? And that consistent communication is part of the business, right? If you're doing
Mhm.
it well, you're always in that kind of communication place. But it also gives you that chance to step out of the day-to-day work conversations with folks and then just celebrate, right? And just say, hey, did you know you've been with us for 6 months? Like this
Mhm.
is this is awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, right? We're about to
Mhm.
head into another season. As if Southern California has seasons, just
Right.
paradise all year long,
Right.
that sort of thing. But that kind of thing, right? And it doesn't come like that out of the blue, like, oh, somebody's reminder popped up on the screen that I have to text this person now. It feels genuine, as you would with a friend, with someone that you have a positive relationship with anyway, right?
Yeah.
I,
Mhm.
I love that. I think it's huge, right? Um, and one thing too, before we tackle maybe one of the biggest issues here, is that we see a lot of home care owners who celebrate unique milestones of their clients' lives. And I
Mhm.
think when you can do that, if someone has a birthday, or talking about them on Veterans Day, things like this, right? Uh, the posts that I've seen, the ones that have been most engaging for me, include that great caregiver who's
Mhm.
been helping that client kind of realize that celebration, right? If we
Mhm.
go to lunch, if we enjoy them, right, it's because our caregiver is right next to us, and that we're talked about as a unit, right?
Mhm.
When I see that, I mean, I'm like walking, I just kind of stop. I'm like, this is awesome, right? That's a great
Yeah.
way to celebrate multiple people all at the same time, because it's
Mhm.
being done by great folks, because they're here to serve, right?
Yeah. Yes, they
Yeah,
are, and they do it very, very well. They're
yeah.
spectacular human beings. I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of caregivers across the system, and
Mhm.
yeah, got
Yeah.
some wonderful people here.
Well, and I want to talk about that a little bit too. Having met some great caregivers across the system in all your years in
Mhm.
our industry too, right? This is difficult work, as you have seen, right? And I think that the biggest issue we can solve, or at least must address and work to solve, is the feeling of burnout, right?
Mhm.
Is essentially the spiritual, emotional toll it can take on those folks, caring for their clients. If anyone listening in today is a family caregiver for their loved ones, I think you know what
Mhm.
we mean, about what this can do to us, right? So talk to me a little bit about that. How must we address, how do we solve burnout for our caregivers?
I think there is a large part of this that is one, being aware and accepting of the fact that it exists, and also having empathy and understanding what your caregivers go through. So when we talk about burnout, a lot of times I think what comes to mind is burnout working with their clients, right? And yes, that's a huge part of it, but they have other things in their life besides their clients, right? They have kids, they have bills to pay, etc. So um, burnout is a multifaceted, multi-layered issue, and I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing that a home care owner can do is recognize it, notice it when it's happening with their caregivers. And even if, and keeping a finger on the pulse of your caregivers, doing check ins, having regular check ins just to see how things are going. I think that first and foremost is probably going to go the furthest. Check in with your caregivers, get a pulse check. It's not lip service to say that we're invested in them and their success and their well-being. That's not lip service, it's a real thing. So I think that's the
Mhm.
first thing, is recognizing it and then gently addressing it, and seeing what you can do to address it, right? You and right. So but there's other things that we can do as well, right?
Mhm.
Can
Yeah.
offer additional training, um,
Mhm.
and working with a lot of the different clients that we have here, or that we see across the system. Being in those family dynamics, working with certain disease processes and chronic conditions, just understanding a little bit more about those and how you can address them as a professional. So we offer a lot of training opportunities for our caregivers to really get into the meat of the impact they can make if they're not quite sure of the impact they can make.
Mhm. Mhm.
We Most of our offices do handoffs, so we're not sending caregivers into shifts without them, having a warm handoff. Like, this is your caregiver, this is the client, this is what the expectations are, and then we check back. And then, of course, we offer career advancement opportunities within a place at home too. So, um, yeah, so there's a lot of different ways, but I would definitely say first and foremost,
Mhm.
recognizing it,
Yeah,
noticing it when it's happening.
I love that because as a business owner of Mitch and Aubre's home care here,
Hmm.
we can't provide a solution to burnout when we haven't addressed that it's happening, right?
Hmm.
Or if we do, it feels inauthentic, it's not genuine, and likely won't go the distance and make
Yep.
an impact for that person feeling that way, right?
Hmm.
I will say this: it's it's not easy, right? To say, hey, I can feel that this is really taking a toll on you. How you doing? Right? It's asking
Hmm.
questions. It's offering yourself to be a sounding board and listening to this person who is providing great care in the home of a client who also has a million things going on, right? And
Hmm.
asking what's happening, right? Um, you know, which addressing it there, right? Would could you give advice maybe to a franchise owner or a home care agency director, whoever it is, who says, you know what, I absolutely hear you. That makes perfect sense. How do I do this? How do I address this with somebody? Well, what might you say? It's just a quick idea for someone who wants to implement that in their business.
To ask
To
about it. So,
identify it. They know they have to
oh,
identify it. How might they do that?
um, well, one, if you a lot of times, if you have consistency with a caregiver, right, and all of a sudden maybe they're showing up a little bit later to shifts, any kind of behavior like that that seems a little bit off, that happens more than once,
Mm,
is a good indicator. Maybe
mhm,
we do regular, check-ins with our clients as well. So sometimes our clients may say, oh, this is going on, and if we haven't heard that from their caregiver, that might be a good reason to kind of pause and wonder what's going on. Like, normally you're
mhm,
communicating back really well, um, but we did talk to so and so, and we didn't hear this from you. Is everything okay? Like, are you feeling overwhelmed? There's a lot of different ways, to recognize it.
mhm.
But I mean, to an extent, but there's a balance there, right? You don't
Yeah.
want to come at somebody and be like, you were late to your shift. What is wrong with you?
Right.
That's not it.
Yeah.
That's
Not
not
that
it.
one. Not 20% off of there,
Yep.
like, come back, come back a
Yeah.
little, let's think about this, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing too is that this comes from, paying attention,
Mhm.
right? Being mindful, having some consistency with your care staff,
Mhm.
right? And then seeing some signs like that. And then next is potentially working on yourself as an entrepreneur, as a leader in your business, and say,
Mhm.
okay, how can I open up that question for this individual, right?
Mhm.
Is it going to be received well if I just say, hey, I've heard a few things. Tell me what's going on.
Mhm.
How's the house going? How's your life right now? Can we talk a little bit, right? Um, and this is an opportunity to surface up what could become, a full blown burnout crisis for that individual, and you could be that solution there, right?
Yeah.
Um, so absolutely, there's opportunities there to just ask and address it. See if there's a way for you to be a part of that conversation. And then when you do that, right, you get that chance to figure out what might be happening and offer those solutions. Like we mentioned before, those training opportunities, all that sort of stuff, right? If you can
Yeah.
ask and learn about it, you can solve it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to be, attuned to your caregivers, and not overbearing. But if you are invested in your caregivers and you are in contact with them regularly,
Mhm.
sometimes that can kind of happen organically. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
really important.
Absolutely. And I would say too that to be that person who's attentive, like you mentioned, kind of being that person who has a desire to be a part of your employees' lives and positively support them. You take care of yourself when doing that too, right? There's a lot
Mhm,
of folks to work with, and if you can recognize where you're excelling or where there's an issue with yourself, address that too, so you can be of service to others, right, and help them. Um, and then potentially you have some systems built here to provide more and more solutions to them, whether it is an issue with training, right? There's one thing happening in the care plan, they just can't quite get a handle on it, and learning more skills to put that forward would make everybody feel better, and we could just do more good work there, right?
mhm,
uh, and then who knows, this particular role for that individual, right? It may be the right person in the wrong seat, right? It might be this person who has another opportunity, right, to field supervise other caregivers, to take care of your schedule, to advance within your business. Maybe that's an opportunity for them, right? As the entrepreneur, you can open that up, right? It's
mhm,
see a little bit more about that, right? um, I think a little bit of some of our franchisees who have found opportunities to show new roles to potential caregivers or office staff and see them thrive in what they shifted to,
mhm.
right? Isn't that huge? That's great, right?
Yeah, it was one of my favorite things to do way back when I was was
Yeah.
to promote caregivers. Yeah, that was
Mhm.
to just see them grow. So yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely.
And we talk so much about how important it is that they're in the field and doing great work for folks,
Mhm,
and that's a great place to spend a lot of your time. But perhaps that particular caregiver has bigger aspirations than that. What better way than to get involved in that conversation and open up doors to advance within your business, right?
yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. And if you do this, right, as we near here our conclusion and wrap it up here, right? If you have tools and systems built, whether independently or relying on your franchisor to help you with these kinds of things,
mhm,
so that you can solve, right, concerns that you've surfaced when talking with caregivers about them feeling burnout, right? And perhaps you can have that conversation by the positive office culture that you've been building, right, for months, potentially years in this business, and
mhm,
that you have a way to be sure that the financial needs of your caregiver is met so that you can talk about this next level stuff. Then you have everything in your bag ready to address this disparity between a shrinking caregiver pool and a growing demand of our clients, right?
mhm.
It's all there, it's all right there, and these are the solutions to life's problems. And Aubrey, we have done it again. How about
We
that?
always do, Mitch.
Gosh, absolutely. I don't know why we ever end these. If with
I
all the, we should just keep doing this, right, and solve even more.
When is Mitch and Aubrey's home care agency going to win an award? That's what I want to know. Where's
Absolutely.
our awards?
Right. I'd like to submit to Home Care Pulse. I think that we should be
Mhm,
surveyed.
yeah.
And it would be great. But well, Aubrey, I really appreciate your insight here, your experience in sharing this with us. Um, and ultimately, this is a challenge in our industry, but the biggest challenge is also the biggest opportunity, in a place where we can do even more good work. And I thank
Mhm,
you for what you're actively doing for new entrants into the industry very
yeah,
shortly here.
yeah.
And until next time, Aubrey, I will bid you adieu.
Mitch, it's always lovely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Tune in, everybody, right here, back at the same place, same day, Tuesday, so that we can start our quarter 2 programming, which is talking a little bit about the journey, right, of folks interested in entering the industry, right? We've built a lot of fun here, to essentially take folks through their initial discovery of a brand, through initial training and coaching with great individuals like Aubrey, to stability, success, growth, and care pro status here. We're going to be talking with franchisees, right, at each level of what we call our care track. So tune in for the entire month of April. We're going to be talking about those stages with some of the shining lights of home care, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I just can't wait for it. Oh, it's going to be so good.
Hey.
I,
Mhm.
right. I'll miss you, Aubrey. You and I won't get a chance to talk for a
Oh
little while.
no, I
Mm,
just that just occurred to me.
mm,
You
you
know what?
know,
I might see you around the office though, so I feel like it'll
maybe.
be okay.
All right. Well, don't be surprised if I come talk to you. All right. Right. All righty, guys. We will see you back here on Tuesdays, the month of April. Thanks so much, and good night. No.